the sneaky dopamine loop that's sabotaging your brain. I paid a steep price for this one for years. A colleague asked me recently, when do you ever find the time to treat your patients in your clinic? We were sharing an Uber after a weekend attending the ICAK meeting in Auckland, and she kind of had a point. Between teaching and learning, my travel schedule is pretty hectic at the moment. Next week, I'll be in Puerto Rico for a UAC event. It can be tiring, but it's also fun. There's just so much to learn. There's never been a more exciting time to be a practitioner. We're literally just swimming in a sea of information with new discoveries occurring at a breakneck pace. However, it's not really about how much you know. It's about how much you implement. The most successful people I know aren't always the smartest or the busiest, but they are the best implementers. So that's our focus for our video today. By the way, I am in clinic this week. In fact, I've already implemented a bunch of the things I learned over the weekend with my patients yesterday, with some great results, thanks to Dr. Steve and Dr. Michael. ICAK event was titled Unlocking the Secrets of Elite Athletes, and the main presenter was a good friend of mine, Dr. Stephen Shashian. He's highly sought after around the world as an expert in optimizing athletic performance, and he's worked with 11 Grand Slam tennis champions, as well as NBA stars, footballers, boxers, cricketers, and many other. Pretty much name the sport, he's worked with some of the top people. Many of his patients are household names worldwide. While Steve has a vast amount of advanced knowledge and clinical skills, one thing that really stuck out about his presentation to me was his focus on really just doing the basics correctly and consistently. I was also struck once again by how the material shared by each presenter, including myself, overlapped and complemented each other, despite none of us having seen each other's slides previously. I shared in episode 10 how I had the same experience in Aspen recently. If you want to check it out, I'll leave a link in the comments below. It's fascinating to me that so many of us are exploring the same ideas, but coming at them through the lens of our own unique perspectives, background, and experience. It means that every time we meet, we're filling in missing pieces and we're building on each other's work. It's a big part of what makes all the travel worthwhile. One consistent theme that keeps coming up as I talk with some of the best docs and researchers around the world is this. If you get the top and the bottom of the system right, almost everything in between just naturally falls into place. Or said another way, most dysfunction occurs from the top down or the bottom up. Nearly everything in between is a compensation pattern. This doesn't mean we should ignore everything else. It just means that if you get the top and the bottom of the body right, in other words, the feet, head and neck, then everything else you do works faster, better, and lasts longer. This was one of the reasons why Dr. Stephen always begins his patient assessment standing in a gate position. Like me, he's found that if you just assess your patients lying on a table, you're missing vital information about how the body actually operates under gravity. In other words, when it's in the real world. After gait, the next thing Dr. Stephen addressed was the importance of fascia, and in particular, the deep front line. This is one of the key top to bottom connectors. It starts on the feet and ends on the head and influences almost everything in between. It's really what provides our core stability in our body. Dr. Michael Hooker's presentation was also focused on improving deep front line function. We covered the deep front line in detail in episode 4. If you haven't seen it, again, I'll leave a link below. We also touched on it in episode 10, which I already mentioned. If you need a refresher or you want more detail about this clinically critically important structure, my patients yesterday benefited from what I learned from both. Other major areas of focus over the weekend included the vital importance of sleep and breathing, which we touched on in episode 8. These are the fundamentals of great health and high-level sports performance. We all know this stuff, but some of the data Steve presented still surprised me with just how great the impact is. For example, studies show that even a single all-nighter can reduce reaction time by more than 300%. Tennis players who were sleep deprived saw serving accuracy decrease by 31%. A University of California study concluded that injury rates in young athletes increased following even a single night of less than 6 hours sleep. Sleep was actually the strongest predictor of injury, even more than hours of practice. One night of sleep restriction, 4 hours, produced a 70% drop in natural killer cell activity. So it's not just performance, it's immune system function. The link between a lack of sleep and cancer is so strong that the WHO has classified any form of nighttime shift work as a probable carcinogen. That's pretty wild, right? Short sleep predicts all-cause mortality, all causes of death. Dr. Stephen also described how much time he spends with his world-class athletes and his regular patients, dialing in their diet and their breathing habits. He explained how breathing is being used as a weapon in the highest stakes tennis matches in the world. For example, the exact breathing patterns that he teaches his athletes to prepare to return a serve, which is coming at them at over 100 kilometers an hour, versus when they've just lost a set and they need to reset their sympathetic-parasympathetic balance in that brief few seconds they have before the next set. Remember, optimal breathing function and optimal vagus nerve and parasympathetic function both rely on your deep front line, which is directly impacted by our feet. He also shared how he addresses tibial nerve entrapments and gait reflexes to ensure optimal foot function. As health practitioners, we know these basics matter, yet we often end up neglecting their importance. And so do our patients. We've all heard of it before, and there are so many more exciting things to focus on. Social media and the internet bombard us every day with them. Like I said, we're swimming in a constant sea of information and overstimulation. We're constantly chasing the next thing. This means that both practitioners and patients are susceptible to shiny object syndrome. We're chasing the newest, coolest hack that might give us an extra 1% performance improvement, while neglecting the basics that could easily double or triple our performance. Just do the basics and keep doing them, even when it's boring. They're basics because they work. This is the low-hanging fruit, both in your health and in your practice. It's where the biggest bang for your buck improvements lie. Dr. Stephen also covered the importance of using objective testing. In case you're wondering, his top 5 recommended tests were functional genetic testing, microbiome testing, organic acid or oat testing, hormone testing or Dutch testing, and also mycotoxin testing. We also covered the idea of using objective testing and data in episode 12. Again, I'll link to it in the comments. It's because these are the basic fundamentals of health, and the function of your feet directly influences so many of them. That's why so many of them have been covered in previous episodes of the Foot-Brain Connection. That's a statement that I never thought I'd make. In fact, if you'd said that to me a few years ago, I'd have called bullshit on it. But it's a fact. If you've been following these videos and reading the episodes that I referenced below, then you've seen the evidence, how your feet affect breathing, how they affect your digestion, how they affect your sleep. Correct foot functioning is one of the basic fundamentals of health. And if you regularly wear shoes and walk on flat, unnatural surfaces, it's more or less impossible to maintain correct foot function. That's why better balance orthotics matter so much. They're not optional for great health and sports performance. They're essential. And they're easy. Getting to bed on time, avoiding alcohol and late meals, these things make a huge difference to my sleep, which in turn makes a huge difference to my health and performance. I know that. But it's not easy. It takes work. It takes effort. So does maintaining a good diet and a regular workout routine. I'm committed to these health basics because I know how important they are. But they require daily discipline. Wearing better balance orthotics doesn't. On the other hand, it's easy. I just chuck them in my shoes and forget about them. In fact, to make it even easier, I just keep a pair in all of my shoes. That's one of the things patients love about them too. They're super low effort. No discipline required. Whilst I wouldn't consider their health impacts to be as critical as a healthy diet or a regular exercise program, they are in the same category. They're basic health fundamentals. But this isn't common knowledge. Everyone knows diet and exercise are important, but almost no one recognizes the multiple ways in which foot function impacts health, including most health professionals and chiropractors out there. Our patients certainly don't know this stuff unless we're educating them about it and giving them a chance to experience all the benefits we've just discussed. This is where the implementation piece that I mentioned earlier applies. Sometimes we know something, but how consistently are we actually doing it? At the ICAK event, I asked how many people in the room were currently using Better Balance orthotics, and many hands went up, which is awesome. But then I asked people, how many of you are using them with every patient? And nearly every hand went down. Sometimes we know, but for a whole variety of reasons. We don't always do. I read a fascinating paper on this recently. It was about how consuming self-improvement content can actually keep people stuck. It turns out that reading about improving something fires our dopamine reward system, even though we haven't actually implemented anything. That little dopamine squirt feels great, so it reinforces the pattern. That's exactly what dopamine's for. Dopamine is the reward our brain constantly craves, especially in a world where it's more available than ever and requires less effort than ever to actually get it, right? It's the click of a button and glance at a screen. So we do it again. We go and we read more about improving. We watch videos, we listen to podcasts, we attend seminars, all of which are way easier than actually implementing. But strangely to our brain, they feel just as rewarding. It's an addictive loop where our brain's primitive survival and reward program is literally being wired to sabotage us. It's incredibly common, more so than ever in today's information-saturated environment. We consume content about fitness. We can study the latest exercise routines, supplements, diets, workout hacks. We can follow fitness influencers on Instagram, all rather than just going and doing the workout. We do the same thing with business. We read business books. We follow our favorite entrepreneurs, but we don't actually improve our business. We become addicted to the process, to the thought of implementing, because we have such an abundance of dopamine-inducing content available at the tips of our fingers. Our reward system becomes so satiated that we paradoxically become less likely to actually implement what we're learning. And we don't even realize it's happening because it feels good to our primitive brain that's hardwired to seek reward and avoid discomfort. This is an incredibly sneaky trap. Sound like anyone you know? Understanding the brain science was a revelation for me. I've been guilty of this for years, so many times. It's helped me not only recognize the behavior, it's helped me to change it for the better. And the impact has been massive across multiple areas of my life. Not just in terms of actually achieving what I want, but also in less energy wasted beating myself up about what I should be doing. So when it comes to prescribing better balance orthotics to your patient, this isn't a judgment, it's a huge opportunity. An opportunity to achieve better, faster, more consistent results with your patients, to help them hold their adjustments better, to reduce the fatigue, wear and tear, and joint degeneration that they experience on a daily basis, and to improve all the other health basics that we've covered that are tied to foot function, such as sleep, breathing, digestion, and movement longevity. It's an opportunity to build a more sustainable, profitable practice in an ethical way that serves your patients at the highest level. Years ago, Dr. Stephen Franson taught me that one of his key metrics for judging how well someone understands chiropractic was whether or not their children are getting regularly adjusted. When you understand the benefits and the negative implications of not looking after your spine and your nervous system, it's a no-brainer, right? That's why my kids get regularly adjusted, whether they feel like they need to on that day or not. This same metric applies to better balance orthotics. I find that when someone really understands the benefits, they're wearing them, their kids are wearing them, and all their patients are wearing them too. There's just simply too many benefits and too many drawbacks to not wearing them. So my challenge to you today is to level up your game when it comes to implementing what you know. Get better balance orthotics on someone's feet this week. There's nothing wrong with consuming useful content. Obviously, I make these videos every week in the hope that they're adding value to your life. But don't fall into the dopamine addiction trap. Please turn this into action in the real world. That way you're adding real value to your patients and to your practice too. And that's what it's really all about. By the way, one last thing. I shared with you a few weeks ago about Dr. Gary Sanchez and his process for uncovering your why, the hidden blueprint that determines how you operate in the world and how you can do it better. In my clinic, we've just hired our newest team member based on his recommendations, and it's amazing how precisely it allowed us to dial in and attract the perfect person to fill a gap in our practice that we didn't even realize we had. Dr. Gary offered footbrainconnection readers a 20% discount to experience his process for yourself, but I'm not sure how much longer it'll be valid for. It only takes 8 minutes and it's well worth doing. If you'd like to check it out, I'd get onto it this week. Again, I'll put a link so you can access it in the comments below. All right, thanks. Have a great week.